So I briefly alluded to ConsenPro, and this is related to the DPDP deployment. As you know, every organization has data. We've all heard the story. We've been around in the industry when GDPR got deployed in Europe. But in India, while this law was there, exact rules were not framed. The board is still getting appointed. And therefore, there is some degree of flux, except that everyone knows that we have 18 months from the date the rules were notified to become compliant. Becoming compliant and thinking of any commercial activity in this arena had 2 or 3 parts. One part obviously was what's called data discovery, to be able to get inside somebody's databases, inside their email systems, inside their physical files and logs, inside the visitor registers, inside the platforms which manage their board meetings, to figure out if there is individual data, PII, SPDI, those kind of things, which are lurking, which have to be managed. For all these customers, and this applies not just to financial services, to airlines, to food delivery, to ride hailing, to just everyone. And the second thing is, therefore, after you've discovered the data, you have to have rules for becoming compliant, how to stack that data, how to go and get consent from individuals who allowed you to store data. Typically, you know that banks source customers, but banks sometimes encourage their life insurance subsidiaries or their broking companies to cross-sell to the same individual. In the new environment, some of these things will not remain kosher, and they have to be answered. So therefore, getting back to that individual whose data you have and telling him that, look, I have your data, I'm storing it, do you have any problems? And I might like to use it for 1 or 2 other purposes. Are you consenting? Creates the need for a consenting platform. There is a layer of consulting that is being bandied around in the marketplace, which will be needed by organizations to kind of just settle down to this new set of regulations. And then there are a few other topics. Since we knew consent quite well, we knew consent because we run an account aggregation business, which Girish is responsible for. We also know consent in Think for a long time, because Think had this product called Algo 360, where you would seek consent from someone to, let's say, access their email box or SMS box, to be able to access information from there. So what the CAMS group has built is what will be a commercial product called ConsenPro. You see it here. Again, started building it for ourselves 2 years back. We're ahead of the market in terms of thinking how this deployment will happen. And I have Amit here with me. Amit will show this to you, so I will hand everything over.
To take this forward, I'm sort of assuming an implicit consent that I have from all of you. So let's take it from here. So I think there's a bit of a background that I think Anu just said about what this whole beast is. And globally, the conversation about data privacy has been evolving over the last few years, right? So where we are, it's a very interesting moment where in November, the guidelines became very specific. They laid down the foundation of what is supposed to be a data fiduciary's responsibility, and practically almost everyone sitting in the room is involved with one or the other. It sort of made a very, very important point that the ultimate responsibility for a customer's data is with the fiduciary, right? It also laid down a lot of foundational elements, like the consent has to be explicit, it has to be granular, it has to be purpose-bound, it has to be time-bound. And somewhere around all of this, it brought in a very interesting notion, which is that the penalties can be as high as 250 crores. So now suddenly something that was a nice intent to get certain things right also has a very strong punitive action associated with it. And that kind of sets the cat amongst the pigeons, right? Always. When you think about, oh, इस पे एक छोटा सा थप्पड़ आएगा या एक बहुत बड़ा bomb. And that timeline, as of now, that everyone talks about is about 18 months. We are 2.5 months down. So we keep saying that if you've not started your journey, you're kind of late to it. But there is an added conversation to it, which is, let's compress the timelines. Can we do certain things now? So there's an entire set of discussions happening with the regulator, which is about, let's do it now. while we are setting the context to all of this, what I do want you guys to take away from all of this is that for us, at a group level, at a market level, we don't see it as really a problem. I personally think it's not a problem, because globally, whenever such changes have happened, it also creates an opportunity to turn this headache called compliance into the opportunity called a moat, a moat built on trust. And as a group, I think we've played that role for the last several years, right? Last several decades, that we are seen as a trusted partner to regulated institutions. Now, certainly the ambit of regulation is a little wider, but it's an opportunity to build trustworthy brands, drive loyalty, and we hope that we'll be able to play a big role there. And within, I think, ConsenPro, which I'll just quickly demo, I think there are 3 big pieces that we'll talk about. I can start with the, actually what is written as number 3, the deployment aspect of it, and come back to the discovery part of it almost in reverse order. The reason being the deployment will be seen by individuals like me and you when we are shopping at an Amazon, when we are making an SIP investment, when we are opening a bank account. That's where the deployment happens in some ways, right? That's where the build up of trust happens. But behind that, there are several elements of design that we'll kind of take a quick look at, peek under the hood on. But well before that, there is sort of this overarching problem that almost everyone is dealing with, which is, do we even know how much data we have as an institution? Do we even know what we are doing with the data that we've been collecting for the last few years? Because nationally, I think all institutions have gone through this cycle where we said, let's collect a lot of data. We'll worry about how to use it, where to use it, when to use it. We'll worry about that problem a little later. And suddenly we are finding ourselves in that point where, when I walk into a meeting, the first question is we don't know what we don't know. But we can get penalized if we don't know what we don't know. So we'll start the demo from there. So if you want to quickly switch to that side. Oops. All right. So this is sort of what we are calling the data discovery toolkit, then entire data operations, discovery and management layer, where we are trying to understand what sort of information assets does an enterprise hold today. So it starts with the broad idea of, what are the data sources that I have? How do I catalog them? Do I want to kind of add more environments and data sources to it? It can be warehouses, it can be individual data assets, it could be cloud infrastructures. So whatever you want to add, you can kind of get to, through this management interface, you can do. Once you connect to it, you sort of scan for anything and you start looking for what is the underlying data that I have today, which typically takes you to a sort of a bucket called data catalogs, where you know that I have 30 tables, 5,000 different places where sensitive data like somebody's mobile number, somebody's date of birth, somebody's email ID, etc. is being kept. And as we get to that, we start solving for, did I intend for that data to be there, right? Which of these are highly critical, sensitive, internal, external data assets? Did I want them there, or these are accidentally getting, created because you forgot about them? So it sort of opens up a discovery for you. Within that, we have this layer called, which is coming from the regulation more than anything else, which is to, classify data into various sensitive assets and what sort of heuristic, logic, metadata design that we want to kind of build behind that. The interesting thing is, and this is again one of those oft overlooked aspects, that sensitive data could be sitting on a person's laptop in an organization. So when you're trying to scan, you have to make sure that you're covering for those aspects as well. I want to kind of avoid being very, very, going into the technical aspects of it. But this here is sort of when we start mapping to why we have certain data assets. So we are talking about why do I have somebody's PAN number in a payroll data? Maybe it is for tax filing purposes. And it's sort of one of those stat requirements that you can't really run away from. So that becomes a sort of a mandatory consent. One of the more important aspects about this is also to maintain when the entire lineage, the history of the data that you've been collecting as an organization. And something that we as an analytics and AI company, we have dealt with often is this idea of, how is this data structured? How does it interface with each other? And, if Amit were to go to CAMS and say, please, I want to exercise my right to be forgotten, that means that the Amit's data will have to be scrubbed across probably 300 different tables maybe today that we are not even aware of. That's where our entire journey of all of this started from, understanding the data lineage and architecture. This is designed more from how the data is getting processed by the organization. It supports your audit requirements, supports your regulatory reporting requirements, and so on and so forth. So this, I kind of wanted to cover this only to give you a sense of how much back-ended stuff is required today, which we're starting to support the organizations that we work with on, just to understand what your compliance obligations are. The second version of it, which I'll probably just run through a very short, no volume video, but the idea here is that your journey starts practically at the cookies that you see, the GDPR-oriented cookie collection that we are having. Your declarations start to become a little more, wider, very, very specific. They have to kind of showcase what am I collecting and why am I collecting it. You have to give users an interface where they can come and see, what sort of consents they have given to organizations. So you'll see all of that happen here. The third parties that are processing your data and so on and so forth. When you get to your other life, which is the fiduciary life, you start seeing, what is happening to all the consents. I'll come back to that in a second. But it is to give every user, every single individual the control over their data. It is also to give every organization a lot of control over what their responsibilities are. So you can kind of start setting up sub-processors, partners, products, consent frameworks, parameters, how long do I want to retain this data for? And all of this has been kind of built into a very, very low code, very, very AI-driven sort of backend that you can keep playing with rather than, worry about your compliances. This also sort of, this is what we are showing you on that screen otherwise. So this is more like, if I'm an FI, I'll have the chance to kind of look at what's happening from a data perspective. And also, one of the components, which is grievance redressal, because people will come back with complaints. How are you handling them? Are you able to respond to them in time? Are you resolving issues within the committed SLAs and TAG that you have? One of the principles there is that the ease of collecting consent has to be reciprocal to the ease of managing and revoking consent. Now, most of us will forget that by the time we get to implementations, but it's a very, very important principle from a design point of view. So you have to make sure that we are moving compliance from this idea of spreadsheets and emails where I will respond to a regulatory question to sort of a real-time design, which gives me as a user the confidence that my data is being handled respectfully. Now I can bore you to death with all of this, but yeah, it sort of keeps everything at a granular level. All the data will be, is encrypted in motion and at rest. It's only accessible based on user level, whatever controls you need to have. It allows you to set additional parameters or designs for notices and consents and so on and so forth. Now, this is to say that as a product, as a platform, when we started designing it, we kind of took it upon ourselves that the MF industry today is what, maybe 18, 19, 20 crore folios, maybe more, something like that. It's everyone that I know of in the industry bets about, that this will become double, triple of what it is very quickly. Can we handle that sort of scale? Can we handle that sort of scale without missing a beat, without doing anything which the customer might perceive as wrong? Do we have enough transparency, enough accountability built into the consent management lifecycle? Do we give users absolute sovereign control over their data? And do we make sure that, any regulatory institution never, ever gets that penalty that everyone is worried about? So that, I think, is where I will stop the presentation.